Well, hello, ladies and gents. Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, and today I've got a special question from April, and it's about kids. And I'm excited to dive into this one because I think it's a great question. But before I do, let's roll the intro. And we're back. April asks, I would like to get my kids on board eating low carb or keto. There's not a lot of information out there that I have found. How would you suggest a transition for them or make them interested? All right, April. I don't have kids yet. And for that reason, I feel like I'm unqualified from an experience base because I may have kids and they may totally rock my world and change my way of thinking entirely. But Crystal and I do plan on having kids, and we've thought and talked about this extensively. So let me break this down by what I intend to do when we do have kids. First of all, I want to start them off on a wholesome, nutrient-dense, nutritional protocol that doesn't have a whole bunch of processed foods right out the gates. I feel like if the kids are started out that way, their palate will have already adjusted accordingly, and it won't be near the obstacle to try to peel them away from the sugary, sweet foods they've become accustomed to if that was never in their upbringing to begin with. I don't know how old your kids are. I don't know what their dietary regime has been like thus far. But for me personally, we're going to have kids. We're going to start them off following a, good quality, wholesome, nutrient-dense diet. We're going to be homesteading, so we're going to have a garden, and I'll have them out there tending the garden and learning about that. I'm going to take them hunting, so they're going to have a very clear, upfront, behind-the-scenes view of where their meat comes from, how to process that, how to cook that, how to harvest that from the very beginning. And Crystal and I are going to have pigs. We're going to have chickens. We're going to try and illustrate to our kids in as transparent a way as possible where quality food comes from and why that is how we should eat as opposed to the heavily processed carbohydrate junk food that is pushed on us so rampantly in today's day and age. However, let's say, just for the sake of, this question, like I said, I don't know how old your kids are. I don't know where they're coming from, but I'll assume that they've been following a heavily processed, sugary diet that a lot of kids follow, that I used to follow when I was a kid, TV dinners, lots of candy bars, lots of chocolates, lots of sweets, lots of slushies, lots of pizza, lots of just crap food. That's not very good for them. Taking a kid away from that when they become accustomed to it is going to be a challenge because they've got that addictive personality to foods that generate that endorphin high that they get from those foods. For me, you're going to want to speak to your children in a way that is conducive to them feeling like they've garnished some sense of respect. You are trying to speak to them as an adult, so to speak. Again, I don't know how old your kids are, but I would want to be able to sit down to my kid and tell them, this is why you don't want to do these things. Like so many people just throw, a yes or no answer or just a reason. They don't give a reason as to why they make a decision. So a parent will say you can't do this or you can do this, but they won't say why or why not. And for a kid, I feel that's very confusing because, kids are they can be a lot smarter than adults give them credit for. And if you paint the picture for them in a very clear, transparent way as to why the decision is made, then they could probably have a lot more buy-in to it. Like my dad and I used to bust heads all the time because oftentimes he wouldn't tell me why he didn't want me to do something. And I would have a reason in my head as to why I would want to, but he wouldn't offer a corresponding reason why not. And I get it, you're the parent, they do as you say, yada, yada, yada. But I feel like you're going to get a lot more buy-in if you can give a legitimate reason that you can back up and make sense as to why it makes sense to do or not do something. And the same is true with regard to the food that they consume. There's a Disney Pixar movie called, I think it was WALL-E, I want to say, kids movie. And if I'm speaking the right movie here, it's where this robot was on Earth and everybody was on a spaceship or something like that. This is way back in the day. Forgive me if I'm mistaken this. But basically, all the humans had totally lost touch with any athleticism, any health, anything. They literally just drove around on little scooters, and they had all their entertainment through virtual reality and they just ate slushy food all day long. Like, that is not a good image of health. And those people were all morbidly obese and totally inadequate to do anything in day-to-day life. I don't think most kids would want to do that. I feel like most kids watch like a superhero movie and they see Thor kicking ass and taking names because he's a freaking rock star. He's got muscles. He can freaking fly and wield a super heavy hammer. Like, kids see that and they get excited. Kids see Batman slinging from building to building and they get excited. They don't see people zooming around on an electric scooter, drinking out of a Slurpee, and being morbidly obese and get excited. So I feel like if you paint the picture to kids in a way that shows, like, look, this makes you a superhuman. This makes you stronger. This makes you resilient. This makes you tough. This makes you Superman, basically, for lack of a better word. You don't want to lie to them. You don't want to say, like, you're going to be able to fly if you eat a quality, nutrient-dense, grass-fed, grass-finished piece of beef. But if you paint it in a way that illustrates that, hey, look, your ability in life is going to be heightened and your performance is going to improve if you fuel your life properly, and then kind of have the two dichotomies there to show what each end of the spectrum looks like, I feel like you're going to get a lot more buy-in from the kids. And I feel like that's what anybody should do, whether they're a kid or, an 83-year-old individual. Like, improving your quality of life, improving your health span, not just your lifespan, should be the goal. And I feel like breaking it down like that would be a good way to start. Now, that said, kids are generally going to have a higher functioning metabolism. They're going to be able to tolerate more carbs than adults would, so they could probably tolerate more total carbs than we would. Whereas I keep my total carbs around 10, 15, 20 grams tops. My kid who's running around all day has a whole bunch of NEAT activity, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. They may be 50, 75, maybe even 100 grams total carbs. But if that's all coming from good quality sources like our garden that we're growing, I'm not really going to be that worried about it. They're not going to be eating, super crappy, heavily processed, sugary foods, but I'm not going to be, going crazy if they're eating more of the quote-unquote keto treats that are made with fairly high-quality foods but may have a little bit more, erythritol in there for whatever reason. Like, I'm not really going to worry so much in that regard. But that's much, much better than the fast foods, than the Happy Meals, than the candies and sugars and sweets. And this has a lot of effect from an epigenetic standpoint. Epigenetics is something I've taken a very keen interest in lately, especially since Crystal and I are eventually going to start having kids. The decisions that we make, the dietary decisions and the physical decisions that we make throughout each and every single day of our lives has an epigenetic effect. We can't change our genetics from like a DNA coding standpoint. You can't choose your parents. We've all heard of this, but you can definitely change your environmental factors that turn on and off certain genes within your body. The gene signaling, the epigenetic effect. So what I'm doing now, what Crystal's doing now, is going to have a direct effect on the health and well-being of our future kids and on their future kids. So it's all of our responsibility to, pay it forward and have that type of mentality when it comes to decisions we make, because it's going to affect our offspring and their offspring and their offspring. So having that proactive approach is key. And I feel like if you educate your kids on that, they're going to want to do what's right, not only for their own sake, to be superhuman, but for their future kids' sake, and just like paying it forward. Like, it doesn't take a PhD to get excited about wanting to be better for yourself and also your future generations. So I would just paint it in that light for your kids. And hopefully they buy into that regardless of their age. And that is my long-winded answer to your question. Hopefully that provides some value for you. And again, I'll have to do a follow-up on this after we actually have kids and I can kind of get my hands dirty and speak from experience. Thank you so much for the question, April. We have got some mocha cream bricks headed your way. Thank you for the question again. If anybody wants to potentially win some free bricks, if I use your question in the AMA, then I will send some free bricks of your choosing, your direction. The link to submit a question is in the description below. I'll see you next time.